You know, it's crazy to think about how close we were to being submerged into the darkness. We were so close to the darkness that it would have made sense to become one with it. We reached a point in our lives where it was a major turning point that could have really determined the trajectory of our life. Something huge. And usually, when you think back at that time, it usually takes place in your teen years. It's always those times, you know. For me, it was age 14. Age 14 was a very significant year for me because that's what determined the decisions that I made during that time determined a lot. For one, it determined whether or not I would live or die, because I was suicidal at that time. I was engaging in self-destructive behaviors. I was basically on my way to, drinking my life away. So the amount of drinking that I've done at that age, I can't even do it today. I can't. Not even half of that. Because I was just I was so filled with despair for the type of future that was awaiting me. Given the fact that I had so much damage to my psyche, so much emotional pain, all of that just put together from all of my experiences. Age 14 was a major turning point, man. It was so much happening from the past, from that time. And, and what I mean by turning point, I'm saying that's a time when you pick between good or evil. And it's dangerous when you have a heavily traumatized mind to where you can't even tell between the two. You can't tell between the good and the evil because the good seems like it never served you. When you reach that turning point, that's the point that determines whether or not you're going to be good or evil. And it's very scary when you don't know the difference between the two. Just like how, some people like to throw that scripture out of, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. And although it may seem like a very fitting thing to put out there, one thing I would like to elaborate on is the fact that, the human experience is a very painful journey. When you live through experiences that causes those lines to blur between good and evil, it's a very scary place to be in. You know what I mean? But rather than pointing the finger at individuals as if they're beneath you, it would be very helpful to break down how does an individual get to a point where good seems evil and evil seems good. Well, maybe I should just do it right now, actually. And I think I kind of said this a little bit in the previous video, but when a person has been really traumatized, unable to heal, did not learn how to do that, and all they know is survival, you get to a point where good seems like it's non-existent. Good seems like you're not really protecting yourself. Good looks like it's something that is intangible, especially in the type of world where we live in, where kindness and goodness is seen as a weakness. And of course it's going to be seen that way, okay? Because when you're surrounded by darkness, it's not safe to be good, it's just not. You can't show people how good you are because that's dangerous. But some people don't understand that because they were never put in a position where they had to basically look at the world through a different lens of survival, basically. Now, that's not to say that being good is a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with that. We strive to maintain righteousness and integrity and a moral compass because that is divine order, right? That's what maintains that. However, this world is out of order. There's nothing but chaos here. So, a human being has to figure out how to survive in such a world while maintaining a good heart, but still being a badass somehow, some way, And so sometimes that can be very confusing and it can be very hard to navigate around that because this world was not this world is not compatible with having a good heart. So that's why evil appeals to people, because they don't look at evil as evil. They look at evil as a way to protect yourself, a way to look like, you know, a person that's not to be fucked with. That's how they look at it. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to say that. And like I said, I understand the difference between good and evil. I know it, you know, but I also understand the nuances between the two, and how a person's mind can be so warped to the point that they can't tell the difference between the two, or the fact that they have a hard time believing that good even exists, or that good can actually, you know, they have a hard time wondering if good can actually thrive in a world like this, because this world will eat you up. You know, and when you have gone through some really, really terrible experiences in life, it's so hard for you to just maintain that. It's not to say that it's hard to be a good person. You just can't show it. You can't show people your heart. You don't even want to give a person an inclination that you still have a heart. Because the moment they find that out, they're going to try to destroy you. You know? So you kind of have to play possum in a way. Play possum, like act like you're dead, you know? Act like you have no heart. Act like your heart is dead. And that's not really that hard if you feel like that emotional numbness from all the bullshit. So I'm just not going to show you that I care, but deep down I do. But I'm not going to let you know that, you know? So I say all that to say that I want to share this. There's this dream that I had a few months ago. There was a lot going on, but there's this one part that I want to highlight for this video, and it has to do with the turning point in my life. And I think this was very symbolic how the dream picked out this symbolism, because so I was walking, I was wearing like it kind of looked like military soldier type of outfit, you know, but I had like a black shirt and military green military pants with the boots, the combat boots, and I had a military green hat, and in that hat had the number 14 on it, and I just thought that was interesting. Number 14 was on the hat. But I was marching down this hallway, and then I got to a point where, you know, it's the next level, and I got to these I arrived at these doors, right? And that was the next level, right? And through those doors, there was a lot of light, you know, like really, it looked very divine, right? And it had something to do with, you know, higher knowledge and stuff, you know. So in order for me to enter through those doors, I had to remove my hat. You know how when you go to a place, a sacred place, you have to take your hat off, right? That's basically what happened. And so there was a little thing where I was able to, there was a hook where I took my hat off and hung it on that, and then I opened the door, and then that's when I woke up, you know. So the journey continues, and basically what I get out of that is I do recall the number 14 was on that hat, and this is key because 14 was the age that I was when I reached that major turning point. This is part of the human experience. There's no need to be ashamed of your shadows, because that is what built the type of character that you have today. And the fact that you did not allow the shadow to define you. You did not become one with it. You know, you did not become one with the darkness. You overpowered it. Now you have control over these things. So when they attack you, it's not as potent as it was in your teens or early 20s, whatever, when you were younger, right? And I'm going to tell you this. When I was 14, right? Very significant year, because I had so many wounds. It was fresh. You know, I do remember I used to, man, it was just, my mind was on a whole nother place, you know. I was not at my right mind, you know. I feel like part of me was still, you know, there were still good things about me. But then there was this thing that was awakening. There was this darkness that was like hovering over me. My shadow became a lot larger. It started to nearly took over it almost took over me. You know, that was the time when, you know, That was a time when, you know, it was the perfect time for the Diablo to talk to me, to act like he's my friend, to act like he loves me. Or sometimes it's just that voice in your head, that your so-called your thoughts, that just you're bombarded by these thoughts that don't feel like they're your own thoughts. Now they say that the belief that one's thoughts is not their own, they say that's a trait of schits. You know, so we might have been labeled with that. However, I have actually, sidebar, for all the people that said that thought I was crazy, my, you know, former psychologist has determined that, nah, I'm not crazy, but I will make one hell of a good lawyer. So there you go, you know. But see, that lets you know that the people that called you crazy, what they're really saying is that you are brilliant. You see through the bullshit. You see through the fog. You know, and sometimes for some of us, you know, we had to walk through the darkness while still maintaining our light. You know, still keeping that thing on. So of course, some of the lessons that we learn, the insight that we've extracted is gonna sound crazy to those who have not walked in that path without being corrupted. Most people that walk through the same type of darkness that we walk through, they don't make it back. And even if they are still alive, they still don't make it back. You know, they have been spiritually unalived by way of losing their soul from all that darkness, and they became one with it. But the fact that we were able to walk through that same darkness as some of these psychos and still come out with a heart, still come out with light. We have not lost ourselves. Yes, our character has been sharpened and defined, you know, but it's like we were able to go through that without losing ourselves. And that right there takes a lot of determination, a lot of discipline, a lot of tenacity, strength, resilience, all those things. You know, and we had to heal because we nearly became deceived. There's times where we have been wrong. There's times where we were deceived, where we allowed our anger to get the best out of us, you know. But essentially, our intentions were good. I'm going to tell you this. There have been times in my life, you know, going back to when I was 14 years old, you know, that was a lot of spiritual warfare too, and sleep paralysis. And I tried to... I actually started praying often. I would pray for a while because I was just so plagued by so many dark thoughts. You know, I was having, you know, these thoughts didn't seem to be coming from my own brain. You know, it was stuff it came from my anger, which was, you know, the hatred that was brewing inside me. Hatred for what? Hatred for the injustices that I've experienced. Hatred for the fact that, you know, I never really truly knew who I was because of the fact that I had been corrupted by way of SA trauma and among other things, but that's the major thing. And the fact that, you know, the one thing that awakened my inner savage, you know, I had to keep that thing from going crazy, you know. Sometimes, and this sounds so crazy, but I don't care what anybody thinks because I know the person I am today, and the fact that I've had so much restraint is not even funny because you have no idea what is in me. You have no idea, and the fact that I have really kept myself under control. I had to live like I was in the military. That's how serious I was because I said I'm not ruining my life. I'm not gonna let my rage make me do crazy shit. Even though, have we had dark thoughts? Of course. You could judge me. Go ahead. I don't give a shit. Have I actually done the things that came to my mind when I was mad, when I was angry? No, I haven't. That's crazy. I can't even fucking believe it. And that is why I was on my way to drinking my life away. That's where the alcohol comes in because that was my way of trying to stop myself from doing something crazy. And so then I tried to be healthy. So what I tried to do was, yeah, I did some cardio, I did some push-ups, but then I would I would drink the alcohol as if it was an electrolyte. Why? Because I couldn't let it go. I needed that. That thing was something that just made me feel alive, you know. But at least I was taking steps to work out, and that helped me a lot, because eventually you get to a point where you work out so much that you don't even want to drink like that. To this day, I rarely drink. I don't really drink that often, you know, because it's not compatible with living an active lifestyle. You're going to realize that, you know, down the line when you continue to do that. Age 14, go back to that. Now, when I was 14 years old, I wasn't crazy to feel that there was something trying to get a hold of me. There was some type of darkness that wanted to take me with it, you know. It wanted to use me as a vessel for chaos or for whatever. I don't know, man. But I have a warrior spirit, so I think that's what prevented it, because I cannot hurt somebody that didn't deserve it. You know what I mean? Now, it's best to not hurt anyone. Don't hurt anyone. Yeah, we could say that, right? But even in those days, if I was to hurt somebody, I would rather it be somebody that deserved it, you know? And then you're going to have those people that say, well, how do you know they deserved it? I don't know about you, but I think anybody that violates a person, you know, by way of SA, is very deserving of a lot of pain. Yeah, so the amount of rage that exists inside a person like me is scary. And the fact that I know how to keep that thing under control, it seems so like I said, I have this glow, you know, I have this light. And again, it took all this healing work to get to this point, you know, because I didn't always have that, you know, because like I said, people have wondered what happened to me when I was 14. What's gotten into her, you know? She seems so different. She seems so, you know what I mean? This darkness was attached to me, you know. It was trying to take ownership of me. You know, Diablo was really talking, man. You know, he was talking in the form of negative, intrusive thoughts, dark thoughts, crazy impulses to do some stupid ass shit, which I didn't do. So I would always work out, and if I wasn't working out, I was drinking, or both. A little bit of both, you know. Yeah, I really was. Man, that was a tough spot, because there was times where I that was the crossroads, you know, that was the fork in the road of, okay, are you gonna allow the darkness to take over to where you become a savage, you become a crazy bitch? Do you want to be a psycho, or do you want to ascend? You know, do you want to go to the path of light and be, you know, be the spiritual samurai? Now, of course, I didn't have the word spiritual samurai, didn't come to my mind, but for me it was like, you know, what was the path to righteousness? What does that mean? You know, because when you're somebody that has faced so many battles, people have been coming at you, you know, in so many different ways. You know, the people that were supposed to love you, you know, they're showing you a type of love that comes interlaced with manipulation, with emotional abuse, and other crazy shit. You don't even know what love is because it wasn't shown to you. All you seen was manipulation and all types of stuff that really blurs the lines, and it makes you think that love isn't real, or it makes you believe that you don't want nothing to do with love because you associate love with pain and manipulation, which that just shows that you were never loved. Because if that's the case, if you view love as an extension of manipulation and games, you know, mind games, then you were never loved to begin with, you know. And when you come to that realization that certain people never loved you growing up, I mean, you're not really surprised. It actually makes sense, because now that breaks the chains of blurring the lines between love and manipulation, because you realize, well, you were never loved, because that's not love. Love does not come with that. Love does not come with abuse, you know? And once you realize, you're like, dang, so I was never loved. Wow. You realize that you were never loved, and now you're like, well, what is love? Now you have to go on a whole nother journey to discover what love truly is, you know? And that could be scary, because now we have to know our value, and now we have to recognize it, and we have to feel like, okay, I am deserving of this love, so-called love, right? That's the scary part, because this is another part we have to another barrier we have to overcome, and that is realizing that you, as a survivor, you're very deserving of love. And the reason why you don't feel like you deserve love is because of the way that you've been treated in the past throughout your life. When you've been abused, when you've been deprived of the very thing that you always wanted, it's very easy to fall prey to those negative thoughts that tell you that you don't deserve love, or that kind of love that you wish you had in your life is something that you can have, you know. Now, this can also manifest into looking for love in the wrong places, and we don't want that, you know. And I think that's another reason why some of us were very protective of ourselves. We put a lot of barriers around us, because especially ladies, I know me, I'm one of them. We are very, very, very vigilant, very protective of ourselves, because we understand the danger behind looking for love in the wrong places. We cannot afford to fall into that trap. You know, too many people that we've known have fallen into that, and we don't want that, you know. So that's why we start to look at so-called love as a trap, because that's what we've seen. That is what we have seen, and it's not a good thing. It doesn't lead to a good path. And so that's why we become a little bit hardened because of that, you know. And again, let's go back to age 14. Age 14, man, you know, like I was torn between two different worlds that I could have chosen. You know, so what could have happened, right? You know, but see, this is the thing. I'm going to tell you what side did I choose, because you know, people could say, you know, there was something different about me. You know, the darkness was keeping me warm, you know, it was there for me, but it wasn't real love. You see what I mean? So when I say that, I'm not glorifying it. I'm not romanticizing it. But I'm telling you, the darkness was trying to come near me. You know, this was a very vulnerable time for me. You know, so I felt the warmth of that darkness, right? Of the energy that was trying to take over my mind, right? But here's what happened. You see the decision that I made despite that. You know, I went to God and I started praying for wisdom. I remember that. At age 14, I prayed for wisdom, because I knew I was doomed to ruin my own life. I knew it. I felt it, because again, like I said, the darkness was hovering over me, trying to dictate my life, trying to send me into that path of just, you know, that send me down a path to nowhere. You know, and where I allow my wrath to control me, where I just run wild with no thought about anything, because I didn't think that I was going to have a future to me. So I said, you know what, why not just go crazy, right? So, and also that part of me, the wounds, I still have fresh wounds that was still controlling me. I was still under the control of my pain, where I allow my pain to guide me, and that's not a good thing. So that's why I prayed to God, because I knew I was humble enough to get on my knees and pray to God. You know, regardless of what people said about me or they think about me, I prayed for wisdom. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Pray for wisdom, because I know I am doomed to ruin my own life, given all these wounds that I have, including the ones I was giving to myself. I was losing my mind, you know. I was losing it at that time. And I needed that, all the help that I could get. And it takes a tremendous amount of humility. I had no problem. I said, it's either this or I just end my life, And then voila, this just became one hell of a journey. At this point now, I'm 29 going on 30, and it's just like looking back at those days, that's literally half my age ago. And I'm just like, wow, like I'm in a better place mentally and spiritually. I'm telling you, I ran away from God so many times. Even through that journey, from that day to today, I still have moments where I ran away from God. God showed me something completely different, and He showed me. I learned about Him through experience. A lot of people like to throw scripture in your face, and I don't mind scripture. I'll read the Bible, but some people like to throw it in your face as a way to make you feel like you're beneath them. It's like you have no idea the experiences that God has shown me in my life that made me realize that I truly do belong to Him, and the fact that He's very, very happy with me sharing my testimonies and helping other people and all the people I've helped throughout my life, whether offline or online. Because the best way to be is to be real, to be authentic. And I'll leave it at that. I thank you so much for listening. I appreciate every last one of you. Until next time.